Fantastic. Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you very much, David, for the quick introduction here. As we just heard, skills is something that is covering a lot of ground in the last couple of days and weeks. And in the next couple of minutes, I want to quickly guide you through this whole idea of why skills actually matter, or why we actually have to address the idea of changing skills in the future. And in particular, if you look back to the image David just showcased, where we actually have to move from the left side, the job specific profile, to something that's more granularly, more fluid, to something that is based on skills. My name is Marius. I'm co-founder and managing director here at edyoucated, and I have the pleasure to work with a large number of enterprises and medium-sized companies on this journey. And the number one topic that we typically see companies facing is the idea that we are not yet there in terms of the skills that we need for us to succeed in the future. Obviously, we talk about skill gaps. And there have been lots and lots of different reports in the last couple of years mentioning how big and how large and how evolving these skill gaps are. One I brought here is the 2020 report of McKinsey, where they surveyed a large number of enterprises and came up with a kind of frightening number that 87% of all companies today are experiencing skill gaps. Back when the report was announced, I asked myself, like, is this something that is new? Like back 3 or 4 years, was this number as high as it is today? And earlier this year, or I think it was last year, there was a very, very interesting study made by the colleagues at BCG and MZ Burning Glass, where they took a look at the level of evolvement in terms of the skills. And what they did was they ranked and analyzed a lot of job profiles. And they ranked job profiles based on the level of change of the job profiles based on what we see today in terms of the top skills back to 2016, I think it was, and what top skills were looked for or searched for back then. And what is interesting here is that if we are taking a look at all of the job profiles, the number that is at the top right corner, approximately 37% of the top 20 skills have changed over the last 5 years. So 1/3 basically of the skills that we see today as being most crucial for these job profiles have not been there 5 years back. If we take a look at the least changing job profiles, we only see 13% changing. So there's a large number of jobs which actually don't change that much. So the whole notion of skill gaps affecting all of the job profiles is actually not quite accurate. So we see a lot of different job profiles that are changing in a less dramatic way. But there's also a large number of jobs which actually change very, very dramatic. And this is the top quartile, the number that is in the middle right here, the most disruptive jobs. And if we take a look at the 25% of those job profiles that actually have changed the most, we see that 76% of the top 20 skills we see today are actually completely different to what we saw in 2016. So just to showcase this, of the top 20 skills on average that we see today, 15 are completely new, completely different. And the problem with that is that a lot of the job profiles that we are actually looking for, which are very tough to hire for, are actually in this particular 25%. And that leaves us with a lot of actions to be taken. Why is that the case? Why do we see these types of trends? And I'm pretty sure I don't tell you something completely new here if we figure out that there are many different major trends in the market. We have a competitive labor market situation. We have this ongoing trend and change process of digitalization. Half-life of skills is becoming shorter than ever. And on top of that, we also have this thing called COVID and the Great Resignation that happened based on that. So not only is it tougher than ever to build out the new skills in the rapid phase or rapid speed, but actually we have many skills leaving the organization as well. So if we don't act, skill gaps are going to increase even further. We did a study earlier this year, our Skill Insights report, because we wanted to take a look whether on a collective basis we see major trends happening across the portfolio of different job profiles. We wanted to focus on jobs that are digital first, and we wanted to figure out if digital first jobs are actually changing as well. We will talk about this in a minute, what this actually means, but also looking at more classical job profiles. And what we found out is, again, 3 major trends that I wanted to dive into a little bit more detail in the next couple of minutes. We will talk about non-digital first jobs. And what I mean by that is jobs that didn't start with the computer, basically. So HR, let's say sales, marketing, all these more traditional job profiles. And then we will talk about digital first jobs. So the job profiles like data engineers, software engineers, AI engineers, and all the sorts. And then finally, looking at new hybrid jobs, jobs that have been there 5 or 6 years back, but not in the level of significance that we see today. Things like Scrum Masters, product managers, maybe even agile coaches and stuff. If we take a look at the first segment of non-digital first jobs, what is quite interesting here, at least to us, is that even though these traditional jobs have been there for quite some time, almost all of them are now requiring significant digital skills, meaning every single job, or most of these jobs, I have to say, actually require technology skills and data skills, data literacy, technology literacy, working together in new ways of working, for example. And just to showcase this as an example, we've taken a look at the talent acquisition specialist, for example. And if we take a look at the top skills on the left right corner, the top skill is actually ATS, so the applicant tracking system, which makes total sense because the talent acquisition specialist is spending a lot of her days or his days in the ATS. So it makes sense that we are actually able to find our ways around this technology. If we move back below, we see social media and LinkedIn as key skills that companies are looking for. Why? Because those are the new channels where we actually have to get to people. And what we can take away from this is that job profiles actually are also evolving, not only because there's like new technology on the market, but because our customers move to new channels, for example, and the ways in which we are working are also changing as well. If we're taking a look at the second big cluster, the digital first jobs, so the data engineers, the software engineers, and all that sort. So everyone that's just working directly with the computer all day long, crunching data, building digital products. We have this notion of, and hopefully I don't, I'm not telling something that is bothering people here, but we have this notion of people sitting in a dark room, just hacking by themselves, not talking to people all the time. And this is a very, very outdated picture, as we will see in a minute, because actually soft skills are absolutely crucial for those positions. And companies are increasingly looking for very well-rounded digital first capabilities. And so that makes a lot of sense because, like, even if I see in our own organization, all of our engineering teams are working in agile ways. We are remote first in hybrid situations, which is very, very tough to execute if you don't have the proper communication skills and organizational skills. And so it's not surprising, at least to me, that the software engineer, for example, that we have here is actually not only technical. We see many job profiles looking for agile skills, communication skills, management skills, organizational skills. And so it's also pretty clear that not everyone has these capabilities just downright out of university, for example, and we have to help and upskill also digital first positions going forward. Finally, something we called, or you coined, the age of new hybrid jobs. Those positions that have been there for quite some time, but not to the level of degree that is present today. New job profiles, cross-functional positions, agile project managers, scrum masters, even just regular product managers. Those positions increased in value because many organizations moved to cross-functional units, agile organizations, working across functions. But something that I found quite interesting is that the level of change for these positions, if we take, for example, the classical project manager, one of the most cross-functional job profiles, I'd say, didn't really change that much. So we still have things like management, project management, and communication skills at the very top. But something that we cannot see directly on the slide, but in the report, is that there are many different other skills emerging. So we have increasingly broad roles and increasingly different skill sets that actually have to be taken care of and also have to be developed in these types of organizations. So even if we have a lot of project managers today, we actually have to upskill them in a much broader sense. So what does this leave us? It leaves us with the fact that the positions, the jobs, the the descriptions that we set out a couple of years back, even the competency frameworks that we, through like a very hard process many years ago, set up, are actually quite outdated in a very short amount of time. And what we are currently seeing is that we actually have to move away from this idea of static jobs to something more fluid, to something that is skills-based, and is also much more people-centric, because as you can imagine, like this, for many people in our organization, their job profile is actually not really telling the full picture of what they actually are A, capable, and B, doing on a daily basis. So there will be a large transition moving away from job-based organizations to skills-based organizations. And I want to close out my presentation here with a final study, also from McKinsey, where they have taken a look at different ways to close the skills gap. Because I hope that became clear that there's no way for companies to not focus on the idea of closing skill gaps. But there are many different ways on how to do that. We can hire people to fill those skill gaps. We can redeploy people. We can even contract freelancers. But, and this is probably the most important part of this presentation, the most important one is to build the skills internally. And everyone that is part of this call, that is in the audience, who's probably also working in one way or another to build skills in the organization, will see a rise in importance, both on the operational and also on the strategic level in your organizations, because there's no way that our organizations are actually capable of delivering the results that we set out on a strategic level if we're not building the right skills in our organizations. That said, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to your questions.
There's a question now. How do we support organizational leads in defining key capabilities to develop? Where do we actually start?
Well, that's an excellent question, and it's very tough to answer because it highly depends on where and who we talk to, because there are many people involved, or actually required, to translate this, or to help navigate this change. I think if we take a look at our leadership round, for example, it's absolutely crucial to clearly define this like the high-level strategy, and to explain what we actually need in order to get there. So to draw a picture of what are the key capabilities that we actually have to develop, because in many organizations this is actually missing. We're just talking about, for example, increasing revenues or like decreasing costs, moving into new markets, using AI for something that actually many people do not really grasp what this actually means and what type of particular capabilities they have to build in order to get along this change. And that is one specific job that we see leadership like having to adhere to. And then if we move down, if we start at, for example, the functional leadership round, it's the very same job, taking the strategic insights and ideas and translating them into we call them skill profiles. So the combination of skills that we actually have to acquire to solve these strategic projects going forward. And this obviously then has to be aligned with all of the more people-driven organizations across the HR development. And the covering ground for all of that, I think we will hear more about that in one of the presentations, is actually to have a proper understanding of the skills. So where we typically start off in this whole idea is to find a common ground with regards to skills, and then based on that, deliver the first use cases, which then obviously, how do you say that, starts the conversation, I think, on multiple different levels, be it the functional leaders up to the C-level executives of the organization.
Thanks so much for answering this one. So I think the most upvoted question here is the next one from Sören. It's this one. Since roles are changing rapidly, how can you actually identify skill gaps most effectively and make sure your job profiles adjust over time?
Again, excellent question. There are many different aspects to this question. One is, how do we effectively assess skill gaps in the first place? So what type of technology can we use? And by technology, I mean even surveys to come up with skill gaps in the first place. The next thing is that then how do we make sure that this is scalable in a way that we can actually redo this significantly over time, because jobs and job profiles and skills are changing all the time. So I think it's a combination of having a proper governance unit in organizations that actually are 100% focused on delivering the skills and managing the skills across the organization, and then having proper technology that enables organizations to rapidly assess and continuously assess the skill gaps of the employees. And I don't mean this in a sense that we are continuously monitoring what everyone can do or cannot do, but provide our employees with the infrastructure that they can actually navigate this change by themselves. And there are different technologies out there that can be used for that. I don't want to point out any specifics, but it needs to be capable to do this over and over again. It doesn't have to take too much time. So probably a good use case to use machine learning, for example, to not have to ask, for example, for all of the different skills all the time, but to predict certain steps along the way.
Thanks so much. I think we have to look a little bit at the time and move on. There are a few excellent questions in the question tab, but maybe Marius, you can find some time to answer them via text. You can actually type the answer, so everyone
will do so.
Can make sure they get a good answer. And otherwise, maybe we also have a bit of time at the end of our session today to discuss those.